it will be an abbreviated version. Shanxing, I'm sorry for coming in late, and I'm sure that Maury and Linda have actually answered all the questions. I had still a question mark behind the financial globalization theme, and let me just give you a few thoughts on that and a few pictures also. So when we're talking about financial globalization, the picture has always been a little bit different from the globalization in goods, in the sense that we are absolutely aware of all the benefits that capital flows, open capital flows can get throughout the world. I'm not going to go into them. Here are a few on the slide: diversification, allocation, but also some income functions which make them attractive for financial centers. But there are also costs of financial integration, and these have been very prominently discussed in the whole international finance literature recently, and have also led to policy changes. I'm mentioning here too vulnerability to sudden stops, and especially for countries with original sin on their balance sheet, and also the fact that you are possibly more exposed to a global financial cycle. So the global financial cycle, and I'm showing here the picture from the original study of Hélène, which is already a while ago, but the fact that there is a very high integration across many asset classes with global measures of risks, and therefore then the implications that may have for countries that are importing this risk, the spillovers across the world. That is one of the question marks that have been asked around financial integration. But there are also others, and I went out actually to look for evidence, scattered evidence of what might be fragmenting. So that is the analytical approach in this presentation. Another thing that we have been seeing fragmenting, though, and partly this is a response to a financial integration and a international monetary system, which was very unipolar. This is the global financial safety net, which has developed a number of regional organizations that want to substitute or at least complement the IMF, and are, however, fragmented between themselves. And another evidence of what has been happening at the global level in terms of the financial safety net is the stepping up of very few actually, central banks in the form of bilateral swap lines, and taking over to a certain extent the large crisis responses. Now, another way of looking at how is the globalization doing in terms of finance is just simply to look at asset growth. And this is the Lane, Milesi, Ferretti updated, last update that I could find, data set on global external financial assets. And what is remarkable here is that essentially it has stopped growing. Growth has halted after the global financial crisis. And that's mostly a consequence of diminished cross-border activity of global banks, but also of the fact that emerging markets are less financially integrated with the world, and their share of GDP has been increasing. So this picture here shows that maybe not fragmentation, but at least a not further increase in global financial integration has already been in the cards. Here, for more recent indicators of financial integration, I looked at the euro area, because here, as you know, the euro area is very, very concerned about financial integration and fragmentation. So they have been measuring this and looking at this carefully. These are two measures, price and quantity related measures of euro area financial fragmentation or integration across different shocks. And the main point here is that you see the sensitivity of the integration to crises and to confidence shocks. And this, at a higher frequency level, you see this also very clearly during the Ukraine crisis. So I'm now fast approaching the frontier where we are now, and where it is actually the most important question we are facing, namely, are we further fractioning across the globe because of geopolitical tensions, and what kind of, at least, what kind of evidence may we have? Where would this be manifesting? Again, at the very there is no way of really answering this question. Definitely, in my view, but we can gather a few, at least, danger signs. And here are some that I put together. On the one hand side, the fact that capital controls and their use has become much more frequent and also sanctioned may be leading to more protectionism also on the financial side. So, for instance, if I look here, this is also applies to the point 5, protection against foreign FDI has become quite was rare in Europe, for instance, but is now quite standard, that there are laws to make sure that technology and other seen assets are not getting into foreign hands. There is the extraterritorial application of law that has been a specialty of the US across the globe, but is also now being practiced by a few other countries. And that is, in my view, also a possible driver of fragmentation. Increasing mistrust between East and West, and then, of course, the major one, the biggest, weaponization of finance through sanctions. Have the sanctions, due to the fact that that the West has used sanctions on Russia, which are of financial and affecting the payment system, going to change something for good, or is it just an episode? I have collected a few anecdotal evidences that I close here of things that might be breaking up, or that might be danger signs. Let's start from the common framework on debt restructuring. There is a clear need for creditors to work together, have a global approach to some form of debt restructuring regime for highly indebted countries. The common framework is supposed to be this. Is it working? Question mark. There are lots of doubts around it. There is the question, what is China looking at when it's looking at the SWIFT and other sanctions against Russia, and what is China thinking? I already mentioned investment protection acts in the US and EU. And in fact, the chart on the right-hand side shows that extraterritorial sanctions have been increasing, and they have actually been, the correlation with the opening up in terms of trade and finance has been very marked. At the same time, sanctions have been more and more used. And again, finance has become one of the weapons. Thank you very much for your attention.